This video is going to show the construction of the Cheltenham engine shed by Modelux. It comes in three scales, 1 to 7600, 1 to 120 TT and 1 to 150 N. It also comes in lanes 1 to 6 and in as many lengths as you want, so one shed can join onto the back of another and so on, making it as long as you wish. This is just going to show a double road 1 to 76 engine shed, but the construction method is exactly the same regardless of how many lanes it is or which gauge or scale it is. So that's the kit, flat pack, and it comprises essentially three separate elements: the gables, walling, and the roof. And we'll start with the gable. Obviously this is a completed gable set. There are two in a kit. The rear of it there accommodates the walling, and that's the front, and obviously the back is exactly the same. So the elements and the construction is quite simple. You've got a front and back panel, front panel with the downspout bracket holes, and then the first stage is you've got internal piers which fit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on the inside of the piers, flush against the inside edge. So these are going to be glued, and it needs to be accurately glued, exactly flush against the edge. They're all exactly the same, but some earlier iterations of the kit had longer piers for the middle and shorter ones for the outside. They're now all exactly the same, but the construction method is exactly the same. So first I'll glue these into position. So here we've got the inner piers fixed to the back gable, the back elevation, and so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then these two smaller ones. So this is where they fix into position. Modelux kits are no longer coming with the instructions, so any future kits, including these, won't have the instructions. They'll have a YouTube guide like this, and they'll come with a parts list. So when I make reference to piers and small piers and gable elevation, coping stones, you can look at the parts list and see what I'm referring to, and also check that you've got the complete elements there. So the inner piers are glued accurately and flush with the outer edge of the elevation face on one side. We now need to carefully mate the other elevation face with the piers, and to do that you run all in one go a thin bead of PVA glue down each of the pier fronts. You can be reasonably liberal with this because this is the inner construction, and there will be an outer pier set, the Invisiseam set, which will conceal this structural element. So here the inner piers have been attached. We now need to glue into position the outer piers, which we call Invisiseam. That's the technique of making an invisible seam between deep elevation faces where they join. You've got the long ones which will form the arches. There's two of those for each set, and then you've got the medium ones which go on either side, and two small ones which go either side there. This is a lot easier than one would think it would be. Simply smear some PVA. We use these readily available bamboo sticks. You get them for about £2.50 for 100. They're perfect for glue application and can be sharpened. And you just have to be careful that the PVA doesn't go onto the face, because it will shine. And around the face of the arch. Whip away any overglue, and then using both thumbs is probably the best way, push the arch into position and smooth round. The excess glue will be pushed out and it will form quite a close contact. Now, when the glue is completely set and the assembly is finished, you can use very fine sandpaper just to completely conceal this join, and then weathering powders will completely make it pretty much invisible. And then just keep pressing and smoothing as the PVA sets, and then you repeat it on this arch, this pier side, small, long, small, long, and that will be the Invisiseam element of the gable end complete. Once the Invisiseam outer piers have been fitted, the next thing to do is fit these. These are the coping stone set which go along the top of the gable ends, and there's a sequence to doing this. You'll find that you've got these finials which sit on the top, 2 on each assembly, and then 2 sizes of the coping stone, so the longer and shorter ones. Start with the short, there's 2 on each assembly. Fit these and push them so that they hit the base of the slope. The longer one should then fit touching the edge of the short coping stone. So slide it down so that it touches, making sure it's correctly seated. Then you must fit the coping stone, the finial, before you fit any of the other coping stones, because there's a little lip on that and it won't be able to fit it over the coping stone afterwards. Now there's this thin element here which you'll find in the kit, and this is the downspout guide, and it fits right in the centre here, and again you need to fit this before you fit the remaining coping stones, otherwise it won't necessarily fit in because it's an interference fit, and that goes flat against the inside of the gable. This is the inside with the slots for the wall, this is the outside with the slots for the downspout, so it's protruding over where a downspout would go. And then once you've done that, repeat and fit the other coping stones. The next section of the shed is the roof. Now this is another completely self-contained section which can be built in isolation, nothing to do with the walls or the gables, so you build this completely on its own. Now the system comes, the main roofing components come on this nibbed sheet, so they're held in position by tiny little notches indicated by the etched arrows on the sheet. You simply clip those away with a scalpel, a blade, and the roof section will fall out. You'll see very tiny dots where it was. If you're a purist, you may want to use a bit of very fine sandpaper just to buff those out, but that's, the panels will all come away. The single lane module is a bigger sheet. That's what every single shed comes with as one of. So if you buy a single road engine shed, that's what you'll get. If you buy a 2 road engine shed, you'll get this and the additional lane module. If you buy a 3 lane, you'll get this and 2 of those, and so on and so forth. These are the trusses. You see on the trusses you've got these notches. What you need to do first is to glue the larger roof panel, because you see we've got large and the smaller and very, very small. These are the thin ones that go on the uprights of the apex. If you look at this shed on the latest versions, there's a little arrow etched which points which way round these panels need to fit onto the trusses, because they're not, there's a larger gap at the bottom than the top. So where you've got the smaller gap and the thinner line above the windows, that's nearest the apex. If you try and fit it the other way around, it won't fit. It jams into the apex. So that's the way around. You start at one end, dabs of glue, fit the panel and just let it set momentarily, and then what we're going to do when it has set, we'll fit a truss at the other end. The way that these are designed is that they use what we call taper grip, and so the actual notches have a Morse taper on them, makes location of the notches simple. As the notches go through the slots, it increases the interference between the notch and the slot, and it locks into position. So you'll find this is a lot easier to build than you'd think. The overall finished roofing assembly looks incredibly busy and complicated, and I think a lot of people are put off thinking that it will be very fiddly and very complicated to make, but in reality even the end gauge, which is obviously half the size of this, is relatively simple to make, because the notches do locate very easily to the slots. And you can see I can do this fairly rapidly. When that side's been done, go completely to the other side. Don't try and move it until this is set, so give it 2 or 3 minutes. So that side is now set. We're going to fit this, remembering we're looking at the narrow top, not this. That's at the top. So now you can just place the PVA. You can be very quick and rough with this because it's not really going to, any over glue isn't really going to show. Now this is actually the trickiest panel to do because you've got the trusses already fixed to that side, so as you move this one to try and locate the slots, it can move the others out the way, but once this one's done, the rest of it's actually really simple. So that's it, so that all the slots are in. We're now going to do this large section and that large section, and that will be the main window panels done and out of the way. It's not, this is actually so quick it's not even worth stopping the video and editing it. I'll just show it and then you can always fast forward if you don't want to see it. Again, I'm not going to sand these little bits off, but you may wish to. This is really being done for speed, so if this looks good at the end, bear in mind you should make it look even better because you won't be whizzing through it at this pace. The roof comes in this grey. It can be sprayed to flatten it down. What this model looks finished is called suffection. So it's painted using different colours, and when the laser cuts through in a cone shape, it reveals very slight variations in colour, which gives it considerable relief. Some people prefer a more flattened new look, in which case the whole assembly can be painted when it's finished, usually with primer, red oxide, grey, etc., and then a colour if you desire that. The more these panels you put on, the more the roof structure begins to stabilise, becomes strong. By the end, it's very rigid. So even though this is made from flexible, relatively thin card, we choose this thickness of material not because it's cheap, which it isn't. A lot of people think, why not make it out of MDF? Are we trying to cut corners? No, MDF's actually cheaper than this. But we want the correct scale thickness, so if this was real, the thickness of this material would be that thick, so it makes it look realistic rather than clumsy and clunky at the end, and obviously it gets its strength like a real building through the structure as it comes together. The next element will be the apex panels. There's two sets of apex panel on the double road shed, and here they are. You've got male and female, which will interlock when fitted. Doesn't matter which way around they go, male on one side or female on the other, it's not important, so you can pretty much just do this randomly. Again, pre-glue either side of the notch along the top of the trusses. Align the notches, relatively easy, that's done. Make sure that one popped out. And then you don't actually need to glue in between the teeth, because there's a very, very slight taper on these that will lock into position, but just where each notch is, you may want to just put a dab of glue, because it's intuitive to do so. Now, don't be tempted to try and mate the teeth at the top at this stage. Try first to align the notches. You should just be able to align the top of each notch of this, and then when you've done that, then using tweezers pinch in the teeth going all the way along. As you do that, it will actually locate the notch into the slot on the truss. That's pretty much done. So even without glue, it forms a tight interference, and then you repeat it on this side. The next section are these strips which form the vertical section of the apex of the roof. Again, just a dab of PVA on the uprights of the apex of the trusses and the vertical roof section. Position centrally. That should be it. That's enough to finish that. So that's repeated here, here and here. And the final section of the main roof is this central valley system, and this, ever so easy, it just slides in, and once you've slid it in, sometimes easier on its back, just to push through the gap between the trusses and the roof. Just put a securing dab of PVA by each truss, and that will prevent its movement subsequently. You can probably do it more delicately than that. There's another element to the roof, which are these left and right guttering systems. You don't add these until this has been assembled into the walls at the end, so that comes later, but the roof pretty much is complete. It's now very solid, it doesn't flex, there's no torsional movement, and even though it's made from the relatively thin card, it's now very structurally sound. The final of the three main elements is the outer walling, obviously left and right exactly identical, made from 4 separate panels. The inner panel, very, very fine fanlight window assembly in black. You've then got the inner wall, the reveals for the window, and then the next section, the outer reveals, adding the depth to the arches and finally the structural piers bearing the roof on the outside. So the 4 layers. The wall itself has got these tabs, again with a taper grip design, and that means that when the wall is assembled it'll easily push into the gables front and back. You probably don't need to be shown how this attaches, but just dabs of PVA on the rear of each panel. Very carefully align it. This is important. You're aligning the ends. If you misalign one panel, it'll leave a gap where it joins onto the gable. So glue those together, and that's the wall assembly done. Now there is a glazing pack for these sheds available separately, and that's acetate. It goes on the inside, and then it has a conceal for the acetate, because you don't want to see all the shiny acetate representing the glass over the where the panes cross the structural members. And so that it also comes with a very thin interpretation of this element to conceal the acetate, so it's reasonably substantial. It's not provided as standard in the kit because some people prefer to fashion their own very weathered or sometimes broken glass, and it would simply be an expensive waste of that element, so that is separately. Again, with the roof, there's a glazing pack, and that's individual cut acetate sections that fit and can be retrofitted to the roof. So you can build the whole thing first, see that you like it, and then put the whole engine shell on its back and simply glue in the panes. It's a 20-minute job to do that, and relatively simple. The glazing pack is semi-weathered. There is a version of it that is completely unweathered and looks like new, but the standard one is slightly smoked to give the appearance as you'd expect from the inside of an engine shed. So here we have the 3 main elements completed: walls, gables and roof. It's now simply a case of assembling them all together. The first and trickiest element is actually fitting the roof to the walls, and the only reason really it's tricky is because you've got to support this roof while the glue in the slot dries. So you could use a set of the extra hand, metallic extra hand things, or simply support the whole assembly with something like a glue bottle. So first of all, just a line of PVA, not too much because there's a semi-interference fit between the tabs on the trusses and the slots in the wall, and too much glue will cause hydrolocking as you try and put the tabs in, which can distort them. You won't need much PVA to actually form a permanent join because of the interference fit element of the design. Just make sure you don't ruin the trusses by trying to force these in. It's quite a delicate process. Use tweezers to locate, and use the tweezers just to push these in and make sure the trusses are right to the bottom here of the slots. So it's all in and the whole assembly is vertical. Leave that for 5-10 minutes before you attempt to flip it on its other side and refit, because it will fall out. So just be patient with that. here we have the roof assembly without the gutters yet attached into both side walling. Next we're just going to slot on the gables. Here it becomes easier to explain about the principle that if you want to join another whole shed along here to make twice the length, you simply buy another this panel and discard that one, and so you have that back to back, so the two walling elements then continue the run of the shed. You don't particularly need glue on here because the model looks taper lock on the tapers, so it will actually hold it, and so you might want to dry fit it all first and finish it and have it so that you can remove the gables, in which case don't put the glue in. Very, very easy to fit the gables, and they'll fit very, very accurately. Now that's complete. You see the whole shed is very rigid, very perpendicular, very robust. We're now going to fit the side guttering assembly. Two parts to this. There's a lower section which glues the top of the wall, and this top assembly. Now if you look at this, the back of it isn't etched. The top of it has got etching detail around the downspout holes and the supplementary apertures for the guttering system. Before you glue it, just check that all aligns, which it does. So this lower section is the same width as the top of the wall assembly, so the four panels of the wall. You can be reasonably liberal here with the glue. It's not going to go anywhere or show anywhere. Just make sure you've got it at either end so that it doesn't bend up. Weight that down. I'm obviously rushing this, but you weight that down for a few minutes before you fit the upper assembly, and here it's best to glue the back so that you can see that the glue is not going to interfere with the apertures. And this should fit absolutely up against the base of the roof. Now, as standard, the kit doesn't come with the downspouts here. They're reasonably expensive, but on the Modelux website you can buy the downspouts that go down to the centre of the piers. So this is the basic shed complete as it comes in the kit, without the glazing, without downspouts at the side, and without the front downspouts. So I'll just show you this that you can buy separately. So this is a downspout assembly that comes ready-made like that and already pre-coloured in red oxide primer, so easy to recolour it because it is a primer, but it is red oxide, and that simply pushes down through the previously installed downspout brackets. There were a number of these sheds, both the Cheltenham and the sister range, the Derby, sold with glazing included, and the downspouts. So you'll be able to see how to fit it if you were lucky enough to have those included in the kit. So you see that's the downspout fitted with the central feeder installed, and the ones for the side are similar, either with the pan or without the pan. So there's two options. One fits directly into the feeders, the other one has the pan sitting below, so there's a range of, I think, two there. So that's the Cheltenham engine shed built. To remind you that it's available in N, TT and OO. Every version exactly the same to build. There's no differences in the kit whatsoever. The only differences being the size of it. Obviously the smaller the kit gets, it gets fiddlier to build because it's smaller. Thank you. Cut!